Hey, it's Izzy. This is Rolling Virtual Cards coming at you with another Commander deck build for the month of Atraxa with Gyruda. Or Gyruda? However you want to pronounce it. Gyruda. I'm going to call it Gyruda. This is a companion deck. You can run a few companions of Atraxa. So let's go over both of them. Atraxa's Praetor's Voice is Wooburg without the red. For a 4/4 legendary creature, Angel Horror Phyrexian, with flying, vigilance, death touch, lifelink, and at the beginning of your end step you proliferate. You might say, how does this work with Gyruda? Well, let's go over Gyruda. Gyruda Doom of the Depths is 4 hybrid blue-black for a 6/6 Demon Kraken. Companion, your starting deck contains only cards with even mana value. Lands are considered 0, so they don't have to put the land clause in there. When Gyruda enters the battlefield, each player mills 4 cards. Put a creature card with an even mana value from among the milled cards onto the battlefield under your control. Here's how this works, simply. You just run even cards that write counters that work with proliferation. Boom, there you go. Atraxa's here because it's even. And so you just run a lot of even cards that work, and you use Gyruda as a way to do something on turn 3 each turn, and then turn 4 you get Atraxa out. But then on top of that, with Gyruda, it hits the field for 6. So on turn 6, or if you're ramping faster, right? But then each player mills 4, and then you just put a creature with even mana value, and you just kind of run this cool deck with the two of them. I like to think that Gyruda is Atraxa's pet. It's her pet Demon Kraken. So, very cool. Why would you want to run this? Because you like companions and you wanted to build Atraxa differently. Companions give you a additional deck building restriction, and people who like to build decks like me love restrictions. We love adding that next level of WTF do I do this? And Gyruda really does that in a fun way. So let's go to the card guide card so you can understand it. We're running 38 creatures. Let's switch this so you guys can actually see it right. 38 creatures, heavy creature deck, because you put a even mana value creature. So let's get into this. Biophagus is 1 and a green for a 1/3 human tyrannoid wizard. Geonomic enhancement. Tap it, add a mana of any one color. If this mana is spent to cast a creature spell, that creature enters the battlefield with an additional 1/1 counter on it. If you use this to get Atraxa out of the field, it's going to get big fast, which is cool. Conclave Mentor is a green and a white for a 2/2 cleric, a centaur cleric. If one or more counters would be put on a creature you control, that many +1/1 counters are put +1/1/1 counters are put on the creature instead. When it dies, you gain life equal to its power. So if you use Biophage while Conclave is on the field, or to cast Conclave or into the field, it'll add the 1/1 counter. It'll see that 1/1 counter and get 2. Duskull Crawler enters the battlefield. You put a 1/1 counter on a target creature, and each creature you control with the 1/1 counter has to trample. Very good way to get in with some evasion. Flesh Duplicate is 2 green or 2 blue for a 0/0 Shapeshifter Rebel. When it enters the battlefield as a copy of a creature on the battlefield, except it has Vanishing 3. If this creature doesn't have Vanishing, if a permanent with Vanishing 3 enters the battlefield with 3 time counters on it, at the beginning of your upkeep, remove a time counter from it. When the last is removed, sacrifice it. This is part of a combo that I'll get into with Gyruda. Because I was running Gyruda, I really wanted to focus on what you could do with it that's different. So there's some combos with it. This is part of the combo. You'll see it in a second. Just note that it has to do with it becoming a copy of Gyruda and then dying. So Galley Greeters is 1 and a green for a 1/1 elf druid with Alliance. When another creature enters the battlefield under your control, choose one that hasn't been chosen this turn. Put a 1/1 counter on it. Create a tap treasure token. You gain 2 life. So with all the creatures you're running, normally you just make it big, or just put 1/1 counter on it, and it'll become big with Atraxa. But make the trap treasures. Those are going to be useful the following turn. Getting all 3 is pretty good too, and it works with tokens as well. Gyre Sage is 1 and a green for a 1/2 elf druid with Evolve. So when a creature enters the battlefield with greater power or toughness, you put a 1/1 counter on this, and then you can be tapped to add a green for each 1/1 counter on it. Incubation Druid is 1 and a green for a 0/2 elf druid. Tap, add 1 mana of any type to your mana pool. Um, if it has a 1/1 counter on it, add 3 mana of any type. So, like, if you cast it with this, or cast this to put a counter, or if you just pay 3 and 2 green to adapt it, which means if it has no counter, no 1/1 counters on it, you put 3 counters on it. And then it can just tap for 3. Lion Sash is 1 in a green for a 1 in a white for a 1/1 artifact creature equipment cat. For a white, you can exile a target card from a graveyard. If it was a permanent, put a 1/1 counter on it. Equip creature, and then it has reconfigure for 2, so you can pay 2 to equip this to a creature. And then equip creature gets +1/+1 for each 1/1 counter on Lion Sash. I think it loses its ability once you reconfigure it onto something. But yeah, being able to just get 1/1 counters onto it for a while and then put it on Atraxa and hit someone for game, it's pretty good. Phantasmal Image is 1 in a green, 1 in a white, 1 in a blue. For a 0/0 illusion, it enters as a copy of a creature. This is here for the same reason as the Flesh Duplicator, and you'll understand in a bit. Tribalder, or Steve, enters the battlefield, or Steve is 1 in a green for a 1/1 Snake Shaman. You can sacrifice it to go grab a basic land and put it on the battlefield tapped. Scavenging Ooze is the original Lion Sash. Scavenging Ooze is 1 in a green for a 2/2 Ooze. Pay a green, exile target card from a graveyard. If it was a creature card, put a 1/1 counter on Ooze and you gain a life. So you're going to gain some life, you're going to get it bigger. It has to be a creature to gain the life and put a counter on it. But it gets big and hits people hard. And there's graveyard hate. It's very creepy though. A Winding Constructor is a black and a green for a 2/3 snake, and if 1 or more counters be placed on an artifact or creature you control, that many of those counters are +1 are placed on that permanent instead. If you would get 1 or more counters, you get that many of those counters +1 instead. Very strong card to just keep doubling up the counters you're getting, if you're getting 1 at a time. So, Armorcraft Judge is 3 in a green for a 3/3 Elf Artificer. When it enters the battlefield, draw a card for each creature you control with a 1/1 counter on it. Just a good way to draw a lot of cards. Beast Whisperer is 2 and 2 green for a 2/3 Elf Druid, and whenever you cast a creature spell, you get a draw card. Good draw spell. Because you're running, how many? 38 creatures. Clever Impersonator enters the battlefield as a copy of another non-land permanent. This is again on here for the same reason with Gyruda, but here's the thing. All these copies can also just hit the field as the best creature that either your opponent controls or you control. Or non-land permanent. Clone is the same way. They're useful because they can just make another Winding Construct or another Conclave or Biomorphs or Gala. Any of these other good cards, you can just get another Beast Whisperer, very strong. Have it come in as a copy of Armorcraft Judge and draw a bunch of cards. They do that, and they also have a win con. Part of a win con. So Corpse Jacket Menace is 2 black and a green for a 4/4 fungus. If 1 or more 1/1 counters would be put on a creature you control, twice that many 1/1 counters are put on it instead. Emil the Blessed is 2 and 2 white for a 4/4 unicorn. For 3, you can exile another target creature you control, then return it to the battlefield under its own control. When another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you can pay white or green. If you do, put a 1/1 counter on it. If it's a unicorn, put 2 1/1 counters on it. That's a good way to get a 1/1 counter on stuff, but it's another way to just flicker things to get their ETBs back. Triggers Gala again. Triggers Dusk Crawler. You can make your shapeshifter clones come in as a different copy of something. Stuff like that. Very useful. Evil Twin is just another clone. Ivy Lane Denizen. Whenever another green creature enters the battlefield under control, put a 1/1 counter on that target creature. You have a lot of green creatures, so that just kind of works. Master Biomancer. Each other creature you control enters the battlefield with a number of additional 1/1 counters on it equal to Biomancer's power as a mutate and as a mutant in addition to its other types. So they're going to get 2 1/1 counters, which is good. If you can get Master Biomancer bigger, they're going to come out bigger. Just very useful for a win con. Mirror Hall Mimic enters as a copy, that's why it's here, but you can disturb for 3 and 2 blue in your graveyard, and that's going to flip this guy. If it'll let me click it. There we go. Enchant creature at the beginning of your upkeep, create a token that's a create a Token that's a copy of enchanted creature, except it's disparages into types, and when this would be put in the graveyard, may exile it instead. Very useful on its own. You're mainly running it for the Marrowhall Mimic and the combo it can do, but making lots of copies of Master Biomancer is going to get them a lot of 1/1 counters. Mocking Duplicator enters the copy of a creature an opponent controls, except it has other creatures with the same name as this creature are goaded. So this one actually doesn't work with your commander because it's a copy of a creature an opponent controls, but I was already running Shapeshifter, so why not run this? Phyrexian Metamorph is 3 and a green, or 3 in Phyrexian blue, so 2 life or blue. Comes in as 0/0, but it comes in as a copy of an artifact or creature. Renata Called to the Hunt is 2 and 2 green for a star 3. Its power is equal to your devotion to green, so for each green pip. So with just it on the field, it's a 2/3. And each other creature enters the battlefield with an additional 1/1 counter. Shakashima and Shakashima. This one gets rid of the legendary rule, but comes in as a copy, but its name is still Shakashima. And this one just comes as a copy. But you can return it to your hand for 2 and 2 blue. Very good. Getting copies of Atraxa, because Shakashima is on the field, is very strong because you get multiple proliferations. And this one works just to not lose it. Shakashima Student enters the battlefield as a copy of another creature on the battlefield, except it's a ninja in addition to its other types, and it has ninjutsu. So, not too bad. Slippery Boggles enters the battlefield with hexproof, and when it enters the battlefield, put a hexproof counter on target creature, then move any number of counters from among creatures you control onto that creature. Putting a hexproof counter onto Atraxa, and then just putting all the 1/1 counters onto it, and just swinging at someone for 30, killing them and gaining 30 life is great. Solemn Simulacrum is going to grab you a land when it enters, basic land when it enters onto the battlefield tapped, and when it dies, you draw a card. Spark Double is going to come in as a copy, usually as Atraxa. It's not a legendary, and it's going to have a 1/1 counter on it. Stunt Double comes in as a copy of a creature. Toski, Bearer of Secrets, is going to, can't be countered, is indestructible, must attack, and if a creature you control deals combat damage to player, you draw a card. Undiscover Operator enters as a copy. Enters as a copy, except it's still a wall. Bane of Progress hits the field, you destroy all artifacts and enchantments, so it's a board wipe, but then you put a 1/1 counter on it for each permanent destroyed this way. And Prime Speaker, Zagana, is 6 for 1/1 Merfolk Wizard, and it enters the battlefield with X 1/1 counters, where X is the greatest power among other creatures you control. When it enters the battlefield, you draw cards equal to its power. So if it gets 10 1/1 counters, you're going to draw 11 cards. Very strong. And then the clones can enter as a copy of it and draw you a lot of cards. And then they might die, but that's still a lot of cards. Sorceries. Only running 5 this time. We got Farseek, grabs you an island, swamp, or plains. Feed the Swarm, which is going to pop a creature an enchantment, and you're going to lose life equal to that permanent's mana value. Rampant Growth is going to grab you a basic land. Aaron Sue's Vile Duplication is 3 and a blue for a sorcery. Create a token that's a copy of target creature you control, except that token is flying and isn't legendary. If that creature is legendary, again, copy your commander. And Rite of Replication can either give you 1 copy for 4, or if you kick it for 5, meaning 9 total mana, you get 5 copies of those guys. Instances: Arcane, Counter Spell, and Negate are all just counter spells. Arcane will draw you a card at the next upkeep, but the person you countered gets 2. Double Major, create a copy target creature spell you control, except it isn't legendary if it's a legendary spell. And Heroic Intervention gives all your permanents hexproof and indestructible. Artifacts: Arcane Signet taps for any color. Felrestone taps for any color your opponents can produce. Lightning Greaves and Swift Boots are here to protect your commander. Sword of the Animus, because you're attacking with Atraxa a lot, you're going to go grab basic lands every time you attack. Making it a 5/5 is not bad either. You're running all the Talismans, which tap for a colorless, or they tap for either color of its color pairing, and it deals a damage to you. We're running them because we can't run the 3-drop cards that ramp us for any color. So we had to find another way to evenly do that, and that's what the Talismans are for. They're cheaper anyway, so the deck tends to have a little issue with mana fixing, but it ramps better. Binded Athasa is 2 and 2 blue. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to player, you may draw a card, and then for 1 and a blue, you can tap it. Creatures your opponent control attack this turn of April, allowing you to get in next turn, usually for to knock them out. Helm of the Host is going to make a copy of your commander, or whatever it's equipped to. At the beginning of combat on your turn, you make a token that's a copy of equipped creature, except that token isn't legendary. If equipped creature is legendary, that token gains haste. This just gets you a lot of Atraxas, which again is a lot of proliferation. And Lithoform Engine is 4 for a legendary artifact. For 2, you can tap it to copy an activated or triggered ability. For 3, you can tap it and copy an instant or sorcery spell, and you may choose new targets for the copy. You do have to control it. And then for 4, you can tap it and copy target permanent spell you control. Enchantments, Coastal Piracy and Reconnaissance Mission do the same thing. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage to a player, you may draw a card. Reconnaissance Mission just has cycling for 2. Guardian Project draws your card whenever a creature enters the battlefield, as long as that creature doesn't have the same name as another creature on your field or in your graveyard. And Mortuary. This is the combo piece. For 3 and a black, it's an enchantment. Whenever any creature is put into your graveyard from play, put that creature on top of your library. Here's the lands. We're not running anything fancy. Here's how this works with Gyruda. When it enters the battlefield, each player mills 4 cards. Put a creature card with an even mana value from among the milled cards onto the battlefield under your control. Okay? Let's say you have Gyruda and Mortuary, which whenever a creature is put into your graveyard from play, put that creature on top of your library. You have both of them on the field, and you cast Stunt Double. Flash. It enters the battlefield as a copy of any creature on the battlefield. Enters the battlefield as a copy of Gyruda. The Stunt Double version of Gyruda's effect triggers. Then the legendary effect triggers. You must now sacrifice one of the Gyrudas. Sacrifice Stunt Double. Stunt Double is then put on top of your library because of Mortuary. The effect triggers, everyone mills 4 cards, and then you can put a creature card from among them with an even converted mana cost or with an even mana value onto the field. Choose Stunt Double. Stunt Double enters as a copy of Gyruda. It's Gyruda effects. It's copied. Gyruda effect activates. The legendary effect activates. You sack Stunt Double. Mortuary puts it on top. Rinse and repeat until you mill your opponents out of their deck. You are also being milled, so either have more cards or just make sure you're just hope that your opponents don't have a target player draws a card, because you can just mill them out and then pass. And actually, yeah, you can just mill them out and pass. Yeah. Well, yeah. So you'll all end with no cards in hand, and you'll just pass, and they'll die before you. So that's the deck. Yeah, it's clones, which is a very unique way to run Atraxa, because making copies of Atraxa is fun, so you can just get a lot of proliferations and just gain a lot of life and do a lot of damage all over the place. And Gyruda is interesting because it limits the deck to even cards, even numbers, but it also really gives you this nice push of just, I have a win con in my command zone, like available at any time. I just need to get 2 cards. So, that's it. That's the deck. I would suggest running this deck if you just like an interesting deck. It's a very interesting Atraxa deck. So, everyone have a nice day. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment down in the doobly-doo. Peace.